I would love to get your perspective on this whole debacle going on with Nancy
Mm.
Pelosi flying to Taiwan. Here's a Common Dreams article that says one anti-war group called the U.S. Speaker's trip unnecessary, dangerous, and utterly reckless at a time when the war in Ukraine continues. Chinese warplanes took to the skies, and U.S. warships were on the move Tuesday as U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ignored warnings from Beijing and the Biden administration, which is really crazy. Even the Biden
Yeah.
administration itself
Right.
seemingly doesn't approve of this. So it's like, why the fuck is it happening? And
Right.
peace activists by becoming the highest ranking American official in 25 years to visit Taiwan.
Since Newt Gingrich.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is utterly insane, utterly reckless. And regardless of how you feel about the sovereignty or lack thereof of Taiwan, I don't think it's worth escalating with a nuclear armed superpower over. I don't
Yeah.
think the sovereignty of Taiwan is worth potentially dooming the entire human species to nuclear holocaust over. That might be controversial, but that is how I feel. What's your take on all of this? Why do you think Pelosi is doing this? And what do you think the outcome will be, Matthew?
Gosh, this, I'm reminded, just to kind of tap into the danger that's here, of what I believe it was Woodrow Wilson said in 1914, in the summer before the First World War started. And Wilson said something along the line. I mean, the armies were up against each other. These monarchies were jostling to kill the people who belonged to their cousins in the neighboring country. And Wilson said something along the lines of, the fate of Europe lays in the hands of a single lieutenant. And what he was talking about was the fact that when you had these armies, the tension, the megalomaniac desires of the monarchies and the governments and the generals and everything else, if one soldier, one officer did something wrong, the war would explode. And of course it did explode, not in that manner maybe, but that's what we're dealing with here. I mean, just don't talk about the Chinese Communist Party. Don't talk about Nancy Pelosi. Just looking at this thing removed in the sense of the military machinery that's in the area, the number of people involved, the potential for something like this to explode on its own is something that we can never discount, and we shouldn't discount. I mean, the Chinese have been warning us for 25 years. If you keep sailing your aircraft carriers up to our coastline and humiliating us, we are going to respond. And we've seen that response. They've been more assertive. They seize islands in the South China Sea. They're building up their military, still a third of the size of U.S. military, but they are responding. And at what point does their humiliation and their warnings about their humiliation turning to action? I mean, if anyone, we should be looking at what has occurred in Ukraine over the last decades, where the United States and the West has pushed against Putin, and he's pushed back. When last year, when Vladimir Putin says we have no place left to retreat to, he says that to his generals. Like, what do you think he was talking about? Like, what do you think his response was going to be? And of course, as many people, I agree with them, this was the expected response in Ukraine, just as, so what is the expected response from the Chinese from what they see as provocations? At what point do they say enough? It's a very dangerous situation. We have people in power who, whether it be Republican or Democrat, do not understand the consequences of their actions. I mean, Putin's a good example. Look, and not even going before 2014, but a lot happened before then. But 2014, the United States stages a coup in Ukraine. Putin's response is to start a fire in eastern Ukraine, send troops in, and to take Crimea. Why do we think that he was not going to push back as we continued to push him? In Syria, he said, if you don't lay off Assad, I'm going to intervene. And he did it, right? I mean, like we have to remember with the Chinese in the Korean War in 1950 said, if you go past this point, we will intervene. And they did it. And that's one thing I've seen throughout the American wars, has been this dismissal of our adversaries, American adversaries. A lot of it's got to do with racism. this attitude that these brown people or these yellow people or however they're viewed cannot compete with us, cannot contend with us, and have no right to do so. I mean, there's a racism that runs all throughout that. But it's this smugness of power, it's this arrogance of power that says we're going to do whatever we want. And this is what Pelosi is doing. Pelosi is in her smugness going to Taiwan regardless of the consequences, because she feels it's her right to do it. It's in her power to do so. And, it's probably got something to do with making her, crooked husband more rich or something. Who knows? But the fact that, as you said, the Biden administration is saying, don't do this, and she's still doing it. I mean, the smugness and the arrogance, and this is, the pride. And, hey, look, this is pride is what Proverbs tells us, that pride comes before the downfall. And I think you see that throughout American policy, both domestic and foreign policy, that there's a pride, there's a smugness and an arrogance that is, many people, I think, we're in our downfall and will continue to contribute to it.
Yeah, fucking insane. And yeah, I think it is a racialized hubris that allows somebody like that to just decide to say, fuck it all, I'm going to risk the downfall of humanity so that I can, go over there and make an appearance and do something that's largely just performative, right? It is there just to stick her finger right in the chest of the, of Xi Jinping or the Chinese Communist Party, right? And just say, I'm an American and I can do whatever the fuck I want, which is the worst thing to do. Because as you mentioned, that's exactly what led to the war that is unfolding in Ukraine. And am I wrong for being genuinely worried that this could end up being like a two-front war for the United States, where China and Russia would obviously be allies? This is just like the worst kind of militaristic decision that you could possibly make. I mean, not that I have any kind of, I don't think highly at all of Nancy Pelosi, but this just seems downright suicidal. And I can't believe she has the amount of hubris that she does in order to just go along with it. And I think that does show how fucked we are as a country and how really deeply rotten all of our institutions are.
Right. I mean, the idea of, I remember a number of years ago, Bernie Sanders said that if he was Barack Obama, he would have gone to Kentucky and campaigned against Mitch McConnell. And people were aghast at that. Oh, you can't do that. You can't go into someone else's state and do that. You have to be respectful of them. And Pelosi would never do that. Pelosi would never go into Kentucky and challenge McConnell that way. I mean, she'd go to fundraisers in Lexington, Frankfurt, wherever, and get some cash, but she wouldn't put her finger in McConnell's nose in his home state. They never do that. They don't do that, but they're willing to go do it against China. Right. I mean, so, and the danger here is, it's really immense. And it could be inadvertent miscalculations. It could be accidents that trigger something, but it also very easily could be just this, as you said, this hubris, this racialized hubris that leads to a point where, and they just don't care. There's an arrogance. There's a desire for power, all the money that supports it and fuels it and sustains it and pushes it forward. These are people that simply don't care. They want what they want and they're going to take it. And, they are dangerous on the foreign policy level and, of course, dangerous on the domestic level. We see that, I see that here in my state. We have 12 overdose deaths a day in North Carolina because of this war on drugs we have. And no one's doing anything to change that, because they want what they want. And at the end is what they want is to remain in power. And do that, well, you make sure you're good friends with the police. You make sure you're good friends with the prisons, the for-profit prisons. You make sure you're good friends with the pharmaceutical companies, right? You don't do anything to rock that boat. And so, there's connections here. Look, I could see it in my case with what we went through the State Board of Elections, that smugness, that arrogance of power, that you're not entitled to be in this race. We get to approve who our opposition is. We get to choose who is in the political system, not you. We don't like you. We don't like what you represent. We don't like who you represent. We don't want you here. I mean, that's the same type of smugness, arrogance of power that a Pelosi expresses when she says, I don't care what the Chinese say. I don't care what our own people say. I'm going to go do this.